What's up, everybody? Welcome to System Crafters. I'm David Wilson, and today I'm having a ton of trouble with my streaming setup, but we're going to see if we can get this thing going. I'm going to have to rely on all of you once again today to let me know if my camera freezes, because it's probably going to happen and I can't actually see all of my stuff again. So basically what happened whenever I was trying to set up my equipment this morning, I had to move it from another place into a new location. And then for some reason, after I did that, my external display stopped working. So then I wasn't able to I can't see my streaming setup on another screen to be able to monitor it. And now like all my emails are popping up on the screen. That's great. So yeah, basically it's just been a whole headache of a morning trying to get all this together. Ivan says, perhaps you should try Odyssey streaming sometimes. I've thought about it, but I haven't actually tried it yet to see how it works. But I was surprised to see that they got it, because I think people were waiting for that for a while. All right, let's see. Sorry, I have to keep flipping back to check my setup to make sure everything's good here. Okay, so let's say hello to some people who are here today. I'm sorry for the delay in getting started up. So hello to Tomas, GK Sudo, Valentinos, Simon, Robert, Medri, Luis, Mark, John, Daniel, Piotr. Let's see who else. Alejandro, Paul, Dago, Drishal, Pavel, Ivan, Bo, Potato Eater, and Omar. Thank you so much for joining this morning. I don't know, I've been going through this odyssey of streaming setup issues over the last, I don't know, what's it been, like 2-3 weeks now? So when my normal streaming machine blew up because I changed a very innocent BIOS setting, and to now trying to use a different computer, which is not quite as powerful, and having a lot of issues with it. So it's been a little bit of a headache, but we're gonna kind of try to forge ahead anyway. Luckily, before I moved the setup yesterday, I managed to record next week's video, so at least there's that. At least I'll have something ready for next week, and I don't have to worry too much. I can try to diagnose the issues before next time. Hey, Jeffrey, and TE, Mark. So let's see. So today, what I wanted to talk about was to sort of continue the conversation that we had started in the video on Monday, basically where we started showing the Vertico package, which I've been using recently and I like quite a lot. But whenever you switch to using Vertico, there's a lot. If you've been using Ivy or Helm before, and in my case I was using Ivy, and that's basically what I've been telling people to use on this channel so far. If you switch to using Vertico, there's a lot of things that you will miss, because Vertico itself doesn't come with a whole bunch of stuff integrated with it, which is actually the point of using it. Vertico is only the UI for selection and completion, and you have to have other packages that bring in the other functionality that you might need to customize your completion setup. So one primary package, hey Tomas and Echo. So one primary package that you will definitely want to use with Vertico is Consult. And if you've used Ivy, you're probably familiar with the Counsel set of commands. The Counsel is another package that's basically a companion to Ivy. Consult basically fills that role for Vertico and for Selectrum and the other more minimalistic user interfaces. John asks, what is the motivation to change? Well, for one, it's just fun to try new things sometimes, but I think that there's an interesting perspective with these sort of new class of completion engine packages where each package has its own responsibility and does what it tries to do is minimal as possible, or the minimal amount of things possible to actually accomplish the goal. So with something like Ivy, you have a similar completion UI. Vertico and Ivy look very similar whenever you use them, just basically on the surface level. But Ivy has a lot of extra things built in, like the ability to run actions on any of the selection items using Control-O or Alt-O. There's also more sort of complicated inner machinery for things, for like, let's say, getting asynchronous results back from a completion command. There's a lot of other stuff that's built in there. And that's not to say that Ivy is bad for that reason. Ivy is a fantastic package, and I still recommend that anybody use it if they want a full-feature completion system that has a lot of stuff already there. But for me, I kind of like the idea of trying to get closer to what's built into Emacs built essential functionality, because Vertico depends on all of the built-in settings for completions in Emacs. Let's say like completion styles. Completion styles controls how the text you type in gets used to filter the things in the completion list. And that's a setting that's already there in Emacs. Well, Ivy has its own way to set all that up. It has its own completion styles set up. So instead of using something that has its own sort of realm of functionality, this new breed of packages is trying to basically integrate more cleanly into what's already there in Emacs, respect the existing environment, and also provide minimal sort of code on top of what's already there. And I want to say welcome to Minad here, Daniel Mendler, who is the creator of Vertico and Consult and Marginalia. So it's nice to have him available here to also answer any questions or give me some pointers, since I'm still getting used to this whole new setup. So so basically, if you want to have special completion commands that do more things, you need to have a package like Consult that provides those for you. And what we're going to do today is try to find equivalents in Consult to what we might have been using before with Counsel and Ivy. And also maybe some other helpful configuration tips that I've found that will make the transition a little bit more smooth in case you are interested in transitioning fully. Now, you may notice that I still have Counsel and Ivy and everything installed in my configuration, but they're not activated and they're not being used for my default completion UI. I'm using Vertico for everything right now. Just checking again on my webcam. So let's see. Anything that I'm missing here? So what we're going to do today is sort of investigate this together. We're going to go through the list of commands that come with Consult and see what things might be interesting to try to use. I've already done this a little bit beforehand, so I'll tell you about a few things that I've already found that are useful, but then we can go through the list of commands, and maybe Minad will have some other suggestions for things that we might want to try. And we'll just try them out and see what they do and see how we might be able to use them in our new configuration. So I've got a section of things here, just some initial commands that are probably going to be the most obvious ones if you're coming from Ivy and you got used to an Ivy-style workflow. First of all, you might have been using the swiper command, which is basically a in-buffer search that is pretty convenient. So if I were to run swiper, I'm just going to run swiper directly here, and I start typing switch, it will filter down, well, my key bindings aren't set up right, but it will filter down to the set of lines that have switch in them. And if you use the arrow keys or whatever you use to navigate items in the collection, it will jump to those lines in the file. Now, there is an equivalent to that called consult line with the consult package. So if you look for consult line and run that, I have that bound to Control S. It's basically the same type of functionality, just in a way that is less coupled to a specific completion engine. It's more just directly made for the completing read function, I believe it's the one. So if I type consult here, it will narrow down to consult, and I can do the same thing. I can start using arrow keys to look over all of the results here. So if you use swiper for your Control S binding, then that's definitely going to be the direct correlation for you to bind that now, the consult line function. Let's see. Luis says, what's the difference between consult org heading and consult iMenu? We'll talk about that. So let's see, what else? Now, one thing that I was using quite a lot whenever I was using Ivy was console RG, which basically shells out to the ripgrep command, which is a very fast implementation of grep written in Rust. And I was using it for grepping over very large source repositories to find things really quickly, and it worked great for that purpose. The other nice thing about that is when you find those results, then you can use the occur and wgrep functionality to do like find and replace across all files, which is supremely helpful. I'm not going to show that whole workflow right now. I will probably do a different video on it, but it's good to have something similar to that in Consult, which we do with the consult ripgrep command. So if I were to run consult rip grep, let's actually go into the, I have the Emacs repo cloned here. So projects, code, Emacs. And if I were to use consult rip grep, then it's going to give me a prompt at the bottom, rip grep in project Emacs. And if I type, let's see, ELN, then it's going to give me a dynamically populated view of the results from rip grep. And if I start navigating through the items, it's going to show me all of the locations. Now, if you work on source code projects, especially ones where there's a lot of people working on the same on code and there's a lot of code there, this is going to be extremely important to you because you'll be able to find things really fast. And the nice thing is you can use regular expression syntax for searching, which makes it even better because then you can be very specific about the queries that you use. So yeah, that works pretty well. I had been having a problem with consult rip grep where when I would type a term, it wouldn't actually start giving me results until I backspaced one character and then it would start populating, but it seems in the more recent updates that has been fixed. So if I try this again, let's say native-comp. Yeah, so it seems to be working exactly as I would expect, and results come back really fast. So it's a great thing to have. It's a really useful function. So definitely use consult rip grep if you are used to Counsel RG, or if you've never used it before, definitely give it a try because I think that it's going to be useful for you. Just keep in mind that you have to have the rip grep command installed. I don't want to put in my passphrase right now. Thank you. All right, so there's also Counsel switch buffer, and that is a command for switching the buffer, but the idea behind it is that Counsel switch buffer has extra commands that are available for managing buffers. So like I said before, Ivy has this ability to come up with an actions list for the selection that you have currently. So let me actually show you that. So if I were to run Counsel switch buffer, and I think it's if I press, is it Alt-O? Yeah, Alt-O. Then you see now we have this list of commands here, insert, copy, find file, kill, rename, etc. So, let me see. So yeah, so that I think that's the reason why that is. There's a separate command for that. I think there's two reasons. One is for previewing. So whenever you select a buffer in the buffer list, it can automatically preview that buffer and show it to you in the active window. So it can be helpful if you're trying to find a specific buffer, you don't remember the name, you're just cycling through to try to find which one you're looking for. But the normal switch to buffer doesn't have that capability with Ivy. So they have this special Counsel switch buffer command. So it's the previewing and the actions. There's also consult buffer, which does basically the same thing, where consult buffer provides you with previews. However, it doesn't do the actions like Ivy does, because actions in this case are relegated to a different package called embark, which we'll talk about another time. But at least consult buffer does have the functionality for previewing. So if I were to start, arrowing through these buffers, you can see that it's previewing them here in the active window, which is pretty nice if you want to take a look at the buffers while you're moving through. So consult buffer is the direct translation, I think, from Counsel switch buffer. Now, in my case, I don't necessarily use consult buffer. I'll either use just a normal switch to buffer, which has the same annotations through marginalia, but it doesn't do previewing. As you see, as I arrow through these, it doesn't actually preview the buffers. So that's one thing that you lose there, but it's sort of really a matter of taste in the end, whether you want previewing. I used to like having previewing turned on, but then sometimes whenever I would get to a certain buffer, maybe it would like turn on LSP mode, or maybe it would cause some process to run or something like that, and it just seemed like it was kind of a headache. So I have started preferring to not have previewing. So using either switch to buffer, or more recently, I will use the perspective switch to buffer star command, which is used for perspective.el, which I haven't really talked about yet, but I will eventually. Let me see here. Let me actually answer some questions for a second. Piotr says, Swiper is a bit slow when I search through big log files. Yeah, I think that's generally the case because Swiper is implemented using Emacs' own regular expression search. I believe that consult line is too, so I don't know if the performance characteristics will be similar, but it's something to look out for. Hey, Bash Script. Dean says, someone mentioned Emacs doesn't play well on 4K. Does anyone here run it on that type of screen? Yes, every day. The computer that I normally stream on is a legitimate 4K display. It's totally fine. As you can see here, this display is 2K because it's a smaller screen. It's a ThinkPad X1 Nano. But the text is very high resolution. Well, it may not be for you because of the settings I have set up for the stream, so it doesn't kill my computer. But for me, it's very crisp. And really all you have to do is just make sure your DPI settings are set correctly in your Xorg session, or X11, or whatever you want to call it. People tell me a different name every time. I don't really care. It's Xorg, X, whatever. As long as you have your DPI settings set correctly, the text is going to look pretty good. So, yeah, it works just fine in high resolution. I have no problems with it. Probably whatever issues that were there have been worked out by this point because, you know, high DPI screens have been around for a while now. So, I haven't had any issues whatsoever. And since I use Emacs as my main desktop interface, it actually looks great to me all the time because most of my UI is text, so I have no problem. Let's see, what did Matthew say? Matthew says, someday I'll increment a number somewhere every time I use it to see how much I use it daily. Which command are you speaking of? Counsel ripgrep? Or consult ripgrep? Vedant says, I've been going through the Emacs list playlist. It's been very helpful for me. Thanks for your efforts. Thank you for telling me that. I need to get back to that series. I've been sort of doing other videos for a while, and I need to kind of get back to it. Bo says, what about consult git grep? That one I tried earlier, and for some reason it did not work for me. So let me try it again since I've updated things since then. Consult git grep. So git grep in Project Emacs. Let's see, comp. Yeah, so that's working now. It wasn't working for me before, but it does now. So one thing I do notice is that it is a little bit slower. My guess is that it's using normal grep instead of rip grep, but I could be wrong about that. My other guess is that since it's a git grep command, it's probably only looking at files that are managed by source control in this Git repository. Let me actually check on that. So consult git grep. Man, it's still doing this thing where it puts the thing in the wrong window. Okay, so it's using, oh, that's a consult git grep command. I looked at the wrong thing. Consult git grep. So search for regex with grep in dir. Yeah, so it's using normal grep. So it's going to be slower than rip grep. In my opinion, using rip grep is just better because it's so fast that it doesn't really matter whether you're searching for files that are in the repo or not. In general, I think it's actually looking at the current project folder. So let's actually check that. Consult. You know, before we do that also, let me go and try to set the stupid display buffer setting, because it's going to drive me nuts. So let me get rid of this. Is that nil by default? Yes. All right, so let's set Q display buffer base action nil. All right, now let's see. Control HF, consult rip grep. Still doesn't work. So search for regex with RG in dir with initial input. I wonder if it's doing anything looking at the project folder. Let me actually open up the source for that and then try to move it to the other window so we don't have to stare at this the whole time. Consult.el, let's close that. Get back to the chat. That didn't work. All right. So Firefox 2, there we are. Matthew, yes, ripgrep. I should probably also check it too because I'm consulting it constantly. Consult grep -- grep. So defun consult -- grep. There we are. Up. Nope. Default directory, prompt directory. Does it look at the project anywhere in here? Project root function. So yeah, it seems that it says that. By default, the project directory is used if consult project root function is defined and returns non-nil. So that's an important thing to know about consult grep or consult rip grep, is that it's going to call this consult project root function to determine what the project folder is for a given file. And by default, it's set to nil, so it won't do this by default. It's probably going to use just the current directory if this is not set, but I actually have it set to something. And if I go look at my configuration, project root. Yeah, so what I'm doing here is basically looking for the projectile project root function if it actually exists, if projectile is loaded, and if it's there, I call projectile project root. So maybe I should drop that in the show notes because you may also want that if I can get back to it. Okay, so tip. Wow, what just happened? Okay, there we go. Who knows, man? And whenever I start editing the file inside of org present, things go wonky sometimes. You should set, what variable was that again? Consult project root function. Consult project root function to something like this if you use projectile. Ah, great. Go back to my emacs.org, copy this one more time, paste it, done. Okay. What else did I miss here? Matthew says, with LSP deferred, you shouldn't have the mode turned on when previewing, but I haven't used LSP mode in quite a while. Yeah, I have been starting to use LSP deferred for that reason. I think it was working for that, but I just got tired of previewing anyway. So is the camera still working? I'm shocked. Let's see. Dean says, I'm thinking of buying a 4K TV. Come on, man. Go away with this. I think of buying a 4K TV as a monitor and use SpaceMax every day. Yeah, you should be fine. 4K TV would be interesting, I think. It depends on how big it is. Are you going to get like a 72-inch TV and just like sit right next to it and have to turn your head all day long? That'd be pretty fun. All right, so I don't know what Neil said, but the message got retracted. Brendan K, does a hash mark in the prompt for consult get grep and consult rip grep mean anything? Matthew says you can split search query terms with hash. Yeah, that's cool. Minad says you can use embark insert on a symbol in the mini buffer instead of typing it by hand. Yes, this is exactly why I want you here, so you can tell me whenever I am missing something that would be actually helpful. GK Studio, you're right. I thought that just as soon as I said it. When it came out of my mouth, I realized I made a huge mistake. Okay, so just to prove the point of what Minad just said, what I'm going to do is use Control-H-V here. Give me a break. The way I have things set up is a little bit funky sometimes. So Control-H-V, I've got consult project root function selected here. I have embark bound to Control-D. And then if I use, what was it, insert, so I'll press I here, and then it will insert the variable name into the buffer. So that's pretty helpful if you are using anything, really. I mean, if you use meta-x and go to like consult buffer, Control-D-I, that will insert consult buffer into the current buffer. So that's a pretty cool thing. That's why I want to talk about, embark, but I'm not going to do it just yet. I could show you embark here more completely, but it'd be better to do a video on that. So it's super helpful though. It basically replaces the functions that, or sorry, the actions in Ivy that you might have been used to before. I think it's the way that you configure it makes a little bit more sense to me. Speaking of embark, because basically it's just key maps. So it's kind of interesting how they have that set up. There's some things I want to know about it that I might have to ask Minad or Oantolin about. But it's a very cool package. And as you see with mine, the way that I have it set up, it actually shows like a which key layout here for all the key bindings, which is pretty useful. All right, so the next thing I was going to talk about, which someone asked about, was council org goto. So one thing that can be pretty helpful whenever you have a large org mode file is to have a completion list for all of the headings inside of the buffer. And this is something that council org goto will do for you. Basically gives you all the headings up to a certain level in the buffer. It doesn't seem to be previewing them, but that's okay. And if you were to select anything in the buffer, it should jump to that. So if I were to jump to other useful commands, then it puts the cursor on that heading. So I think there's a couple commands for this in Consult. One of them that's useful not only here, but also for other types of buffers is consult imenu. So consult imenu. So if I press that, then I get a similar listing, which is basically the same thing as the headings. And if I navigate through them, it actually brings me to the various headings. I can type other to filter down to the headings that have the word other in them, which can be helpful. So if you go to my emacs.org file, if I were to do that binding, which I actually have bound to Control-Alt-L, and I type in TypeScript, well, it doesn't show up, which is kind of funny. Type. Okay, so I think that there's a certain level of headings it shows items for. So languages, there we go, development languages. So there may be a variable to configure that. Let me actually see. Is it like refile depth? Refile. Could be refile targets. Let's find out. How about that? So consult iMenu. What if I do Control D and then D, find definition? Bam, that was great. Okay, so interactive consult menu I select. Okay, so it's probably consult iMenu items. Consult dash iMenu dash dash items. And then is it just pulling up regular iMenu to get the list? Maybe. Consult iMenu compute. Compute candidates. Yeah, I'm not going to dig too far into this, but my guess is that it's probably pulling up what iMenu uses. So if I were to jump to, let's see, this buffer again, iMenu. Yeah, so iMenu pulls up a bunch of headings and displays them differently, but it seems like it's only 2 levels. Minad says there's also consult org heading, which is like consult iMenu, but with some org enhancements. Yep, that was the other one I was thinking of, which basically, I don't think that meta dot is going to jump the definition inside of an org mode buffer. It would do it in an Emacs list buffer, I think, but like from right here, let's see if it will work. I'd be very surprised if it did. So consult iMenu meta period. Yeah, so it's expecting to do evil repeat in my key binding setup. So let's run consult org heading. And then now what you see is you get a deeper listing of headings, and they're also propertized with the same properties that are on each heading level. So that might actually be more useful in this case. Console iMenu is more of a catch-all. It has functionality in other types of buffers as well. Like for instance, if you are in an LSP mode buffer, I think iMenu is going to give you a listing of all the symbols in that buffer. So having a binding set to console iMenu can be pretty helpful. But in org mode buffers, you might have that same binding be bound to consult org heading instead. So that's what I ran, right? Yeah, consult org heading. So let's go back to my Emacs config buffer, run consult org heading. I'll type in TypeScript, and then it gets me right down to the TypeScript heading, which is great. Very useful. Mastodon, yeah, just basically anywhere you want to go. Pretty easy to get there. Hey, Ashraz. Haven't seen you around the Discord in a little bit, I think. Let's see. Marduk asks, came too late to the party. What's the benefit of replacing Ivy with Vertico and Counsel with Consult? Because it's fun. That's why. I mean, isn't part of the point of using a program that's as configurable as Emacs is that so that once you get finally settled in with a configuration that you can completely just change it and start doing something different? I mean, the whole point of using a program like this is just to poke around with it all day and pretend that you're working. So, you know, that's just the way that I live my life, so don't judge me. Okay, so let's see. What else did I want to say? All right, so here's the point where I want 2 things. I want your suggestion for commands that you were using with Counsel and certain workflows that you were doing with Ivy and Counsel, so I can try to figure out what the equivalence would be. And also, Minad, if you have any other suggestions for consult commands that I should look at, definitely let me know so I can take a look at those. One other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the command list here. Marduk, yeah, I know. So I think the benefit is more with more of integration with Emacs as it should be, rather than performance. However, I do feel that Vertico and Consult together are very fast. even though there's a lot of additional functionality that you can get from Vertico, Consult, and Marginalia. So I feel like the performance is fantastic. Ashra says, is Counsel Emacs already remapped replaced? Well, I only just use normal Emacs now, and it works great because when you use that and you turn on Marginalia, you get a lot of the same stuff that you would get from Ivy Rich, like the key bindings for each command and also the documentation string for the command. So in my case, it's pretty useful. The only thing that I'm missing here, which I've spoken to Minat about before, is having a way to tell which minor mode or major mode even is active currently, because sometimes what I'll do is I will look for a particular mode and look at the face of the name of the mode to see whether it's turned on or not, which is not really the right way to do that. I think there's actually a consult mode listing. Yeah, consult minor mode menu, which will tell you which ones are on or off. But I think it's doing it based on the short name rather than the full mode name. So that's one thing that may not be very straightforward. Oh, I guess it does on some of them. But it was something that I was getting used to from Ivy, where whenever I did Counsel Emacs, I could see what modes were active whenever the face was different. Matthew says, no, it wasn't mentioned already. Consult Mark is probably up there with RipGrep for me. So I don't use Marks enough. I really need to be using Marks more. Consult Mark. Let's take a look at that one. So if you watched the video that I did on efficient selections maybe 2 weeks ago in the Emacs Essential series, we were talking about marks and how a buffer could have a list of marks that you could jump back to. And I think what Consult Mark is doing is actually giving you that list of marks as a selection list so that you can search over the lines and get back to them. So basically the history of the marks, if I'm not mistaken. Picard at Benjamin says, something to find a file anywhere in the hierarchy of the current repo. I don't know what commands people use for that without projectile, but with projectile, if you just use the, so let's go to this Emacs folder. I have, what is it? Control-Alt-P bound to, oh, no, that's not the right one. Let me go to a file. Control-Alt-P bound to projectile find file. So if I were to go in this buffer and hit Control-Alt-P, it will give me a list of all the files in the current repo that I can search over. So if I were to look for Tetris, then I could find the tetris.el file. So that is pretty helpful. Yeah, Matthew, that's basically the way that I use it also with evil mode. I can just press Control-O to jump back to other places. I don't know if that's, let's see, what is it called? Evil jump backward. So it's a jump list. I don't know if it uses the same mark list, but I use that quite often. Let's see. Ashraz, is there anything in particular about Counsel Emacs that you liked aside from what I already talked about? Because I'm curious. Alrighty. So let's see. What did we say here? Consult Mark. So other useful commands. Consult Mark. Show a list of previous mark locations. Let's fix that text. GK Sudo says, I missed the fuzzy finding with Ivy and switched to Corfu. It's a great alternative, or do you have a better suggestion? Corfu is really nice. Another package by Mined. I like the UI quite a lot. I think it's very nice looking, and it seems very fast, and it doesn't seem as clunky as company mode can be at times. So I use it. Let's see if eShell will cooperate here. So yeah, so right now Corfu's not working. Sometimes I have to turn it off and back on again before it works. So in eShell, it will give me these pop-ups, which is pretty nice. But my key bindings aren't set perfectly. So yeah, Corfu's great. I like it a lot. I think it looks really nice, and it makes navigating things pretty fast as well. However, you know, it is pretty nice to have the completions with Vertico in this buffer. So projects, if I hit tab, it actually shows up down here, and I get a lot of extra information in this completion list, which is pretty cool. So it's worked out pretty well for me. So I'm pretty happy either way, to be honest. I don't think there is a way to do completion in region with Vertico right now, which is kind of what's necessary to be in a code buffer and get completions. So if I were to type cons and press Control-Alt-I, yeah, Corfu is going to pop up on that one, but I thought I turned that off. Disabled in current buffer. So console, Control-Alt-I. Okay, so it does actually work if I do that. So that's great. Either way, Vertico or Corfu is going to work for completion in region. So it's pretty nice. Minad says, consult minor mode menu has a nice narrowing feature. Enter I space to get the activated minor modes. See, I saw something about narrowing, but I didn't understand what that meant. So let's pull that out one more time. Consult mode minor menu, press I space, and then it toggles this thing for any mode that's on, which is great. I like that. Minad, is there a way to show the names of the modes without the actual lighter name? Can you show like the full mode name? Some of them actually do have the mode name, but the other ones have the lighter of the mode instead, it seems. Unless I'm totally wrong about that. I do see some of these do have their lighter and the mode name as well, so I don't know what these first set of mode names are, unless it's something else. Let's see. Vlad says, one tip with Counsel buffer is that you can press B and space so only buffers will be visible. Same goes for files, F plus space, and bookmarks. Yep, that's the similar idea, I think, with the narrowing. Consult outline, if you can probably get away with consult most of the time. So let's check that out. Consult outline. So in this file, it seems to pick up the comment headers, basically, which is pretty useful, I think, to navigate around inside of the source file. I think that's mainly a convention in Emacs list files. So let's check out an org file and do the same thing, consult outline. Yeah, that's cool too. It just gives you all the headings, basically, but no nesting, I guess. So let me write that one too. So consult outline, show a list of headings in the current file depending on type. And consult minor mode menu, show a list of all minor modes. Press, let's see, what was it? Console completion in region. Oh, okay. Both lighter and full name. Great. So what was it? I space? Yeah. Okay. So I press I space to filter, to narrow to active modes. Cool. And then console completion in region, is that a variable or a function? Let's check it out. Completion in region, console completion in region, doesn't show up anywhere in what I have currently. Is that a macro? Can't be a macro. Oh, there it is. Why didn't it show up in the function list? Console completion in region. This is getting really annoying. Prompt for completion of region in the mini buffer if non-unique. Does that turn on by default? Because it seems to be working. Okay, so if you pass this as the completion in region function setting, yeah. So completion in region function. So I think that's set to Corfu right now. Let me back up. Whoa, what did I just do? I think I kicked out the chat pop-up. Whoops, there we go. This is what happens when you start clicking around on places. You end up doing the wrong thing. There we go. All right, so projectile completion system with Vertico didn't work for me. You shouldn't need to do that because Vertico hooks into the default completing read functions setup so that projectile would just use it by default as far as I know. So I could be wrong about that, but I think that you shouldn't have to do anything. Let me actually check what mine is. projectile completion system is set to auto. And I'm pretty sure that it's going to use the right thing, because whenever I call projectile find file, it will show me a list of all the files. Wait, hold on a second. Let me go to an actual project folder. Projectile find file. Projectile find file. It gives me stuff from, it shows it in a Vertico completion, and I haven't done anything to configure that in projectile. I'm pretty sure in my projectile config, to use package projectile. Okay, let me out. Yeah, I haven't done anything special here. I've disabled Counsel projectile, which is important if you have been using projectile before. Sorry, if you've been using Ivy before and you're switching to if you're switching to Vertico and Consult, then turn off Counsel projectile, because that actually hooks into projectile to use Ivy for everything. So basically, you want to not have this set up. So I have it disabled. So as we can see, projectile is working with Vertico. Amlesh, I think maybe you have Counsel projectile set up potentially. I think you're XAMLs, right? If you take out anything related to Counsel in your projectile config, you should be okay, because you shouldn't need any extra configuration to use it with Vertico. So let's see. I guess this is Luce. Can you scroll through headings like that with Counsel? Yeah, you can do that, I think. So was Counsel org? No. Or go to. I think you can, but it's not working for me right now with this one. It used to work for me, I think. Camera froze. Finally it happened. Thank you for letting me know. Let me see if I can jiggle it a little bit and make it come back. Now you get to look at my frozen face while I fix this. Okay, that's gonna work, but I think the next time it won't work. So this is our last chance to see my bald head for the rest of the stream. Okay. Yeah, Marduk asking about transparency. So does anyone know if there's a way to get a transparent frame but non-transparent text in Emacs? I think the answer is no. I think the reason why my text looks like it's not transparent even though my frame is transparent is because the contrast of my text is high enough that you can't tell that it's partially transparent. All right, let's see. What else I want to talk about on that front? Man, let me just change my... What is going on here? That's amazing. All right, let me check display buffer A list. It's set to nil. What's going on? Display buffer base action. Let's set this to plain old nil and see what happens. I can't even switch to this buffer now without it popping to a different window, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So let's just do this now. Boy, am I tired of weird things happening. Okay. Oh, and there's another thing I forgot to do with the chat. And Eric is not around to remind me of it, I think. What in the hell is happening here? This is so ridiculous. It's like the windows are pinned to specific, the buffers are pinned to specific windows now, and it won't let me switch them back. How about this? Win move swap states right. No win, come on. Swap left. This is really weird, man. Something's going on here. Okay, let's just close that out. And then I'll do it again. One day, folks, one day, I think I'll get my configuration back to the point where it's not going to give me a headache anymore. Hey, there we go. Okay. And once again, it's just not working. So let me just kill this buffer so that it forgets which window it's supposed to be in. And I'll go back and keep chat on right. Yeah, I guess it's bigger, but I don't know. Matthew says, are you possibly using your EXWM configuration from when you had more monitors? I am using the same thing, but it shouldn't have affected this. I believe that, give me a break, dude. What is happening here? This is just stupid. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, it's supposed to be the display buffer A-list thing, I would imagine, but for some reason, it's still acting strange. You know, maybe there's a setting that I'm using that is causing it. Display buffer base action. See, I already changed this back to nil. And anytime I open up a help buffer, it pops over to this side. Is this dedicated now? Is that what's happening? Window. Is there a way to set whether Window's dedicated? Set window. Come on, man. That's it, Amlesh. Yeah, that's the one. You need to change that one. Okay, so let me see if I actually have that set too. Projectile. Yeah, I took that out. Thank God. All right, so what was I doing? I was trying to make sure, I was trying to get my display buffer setting working correctly again, because it's obviously not for some reason. So this is the dark side of having a very weird custom configuration, folks, is that sometimes things will go wrong and you're trying to do something legitimate, like do a live stream or a presentation at work, and then you have to sit there and fidget with your configuration to make it actually work properly, and it's kind of annoying. Okay, so let's see. Display buffer base action. I don't have anything else set that should be controlling that. Display buffer A list is nil. What about anything else display buffer related? Let's be more specific. Buffer. Oh, and as Nightbot keeps annoyingly reminding you, if you haven't liked the video, please like the video or the stream so that people can find it. For some reason, the YouTube algorithm, when you like the video while you're on the stream, it helps promote it for some reason. You know, we have to game the system here so that more people can come and watch me stumble around and do stupid things. All right, whatever. The point here was for me to get back to the notes for this this stream. Okay, finally, great, it worked. Man. What a nightmare. Okay, so let's look at the useful commands list here. So we've got a few of these things written down. Trying to see if there's anything else that I had missed. Okay, so there's console completion in region. Yeah, that must be getting set. Let me write that down here. So consult completion in region can be used with the completion in region function. Let's use this nice little functionality here. Control DI. Boom, look at that. Use with the completion in region function variable to do in buffer completions using Vertico. Or whatever the UI is for your completions. That's kind of the nice thing, is that all these console commands, I didn't say this at the start, I think, is that all the console commands are actually implementing completing read. They're creating completing read functions, basically. What that means is they're using Emacs' own built-in functionality for showing completions or selection lists. And because Vertico is hooked up as the UI for that, it shows up in Vertico. However, if you were to use Selectrum or iCompleteVertical or anything else, these functions will still work the same way. The way they look in the UI might be different because it really just depends on what interface you're using for your selections or completions. But the beauty of it is it's not like Counsel, which is only meant to work with Ivy. Consult can work with anything. So it's a very useful feature of this whole sphere of packages. Even Embark can be used without Vertico or without Selectrum. You can use Embark by itself. You don't necessarily want to. I don't think I would use Embark by itself because you can do completions with Embark, but I think it's better to use Vertico or Selectrum with Embark instead. Marginalia also works with Vertico and Selectrum, and I think it also works with iComplete Vertical because I was using it with that too. So all these packages are working with other systems, which is really nice. Great part of that functionality, in my opinion. It gives you the freedom to switch to different interfaces. So if you set up Vertico and there's something about it that you don't like and you want to try Selectrum instead, all you got to do is just switch Vertico with Selectrum, and in most cases it should work. I think there is some special configuration that might be needed for Selectrum with Consult, but I think that has decreased over time, the amount of special config that's needed. Embark needed some special config with Selectrum at some point too, but I don't know if it's still the case. I know that Minad is going to the various repos and like trying to smooth things out. I've seen a lot of PRs across the repos where he's been doing that, so that's a very nice thing that Minad is doing. Oh, Minad says that Marginalia works with Ivy since today. So if you don't like the fact that Ivy Rich is kind of wonky and lines things up incorrectly, maybe you could try Marginalia instead. That was a problem that I had with Ivy Rich, is that the default configuration for Ivy Rich tried to use different faces for different file names for some reason, and it would cause the alignment of everything to get shifted weirdly whenever you try to switch buffers. So like org mode buffers would have a variable pitch font, and normal code or text buffers would have a monospace font. So all of the stuff would be lined up wrong and it just looked ugly. But whenever you switch buffers in Vertico, well, at least not with this one, but if you do this one, it's lined up perfectly. It looks very nice. One thing I did want to ask you, Minad. So this function, persp switch to buffer star. This function is a completing read function that's actually using the underlying read buffer to switch and completing read, but for some reason Marginalia doesn't actually apply the annotations for the buffer category. I don't know why this particular command doesn't actually work with it. Do you have any idea why that might be the case? Because if I use that, which I have it bound to my main buffer switch and key binding, I get no annotations on this one. Whereas whenever I have Control XB, which is the normal switch to buffer, I get perfectly fine annotations. So it must be something that is wrong with the persp mode implementation, and it's something I'll probably try to submit a PR there for if we can figure out what the problem is. All right. What else we have here? So, oh yeah, there's a couple of nice things here. Oh, one thing that I need to ask Minad about here, but all right, the commands must supply a completion category. This perspective command of yours is not supplying that information. Cool. So I'll figure out how to do that, and I will try to make a contribution to their repo to fix that, because I would like for that to work. So consult history is pretty useful, actually. If you open up, oh, cool. Marginalia has a workaround. I'll take a look at that also. So if you open up any mini buffer command, like switch to buffer, and press Control R, well, at least in my setup, I'll tell you how it works. You can get a history list of all the previous things that you entered into that buffer, which can be pretty useful if you're trying to find something that you had put in there before. I don't know if this requires save hist to be turned on, but it is pretty nice. It also works for, I think, find file. If I use Control R here, it gives me the list of previous files that I opened. If I, let's see, what else was it? Meta X, Control R here will give me a history, but it basically just lines up with the history that you see in Meta X because it sorts that list by the history. This is all provided by the consult history command, and in my configuration, I have that bound to Control R, since inside of Bash, if you hit Control R, it gives you like the history of commands you typed, so it makes sense to use that as a binding. So if I go look at, maybe it's under Vertico. No, it must be under consult. Yeah, here. So in my consult config, I have Control R bound to consult history, and when you run that in a mini buffer, you'll get that history list for all of your mini buffer commands, which is pretty nice. Works for things like finding variables. If you hit Control R, it gives you the list of things that you've searched for recently. That's actually the function list for some reason. I don't know why that showed up in the variable list. pretty weird. Matthew says meta P and meta N go back and forth in the history. That is possibly true. Weird that it's giving me a different history. But console history is pretty nice. It also works in shells. If I hit Control R here in E shell, it's going to give me a history listing of the commands that I typed in E shell recently, and I can do a fuzzy match on those as well. So if I type in Doom, you can see the places where I was trying to clone Doom Emacs for another video I'm working on. And as you arrow through these, it will let you select them, and then it just inserts it. So very nice and quick way to get history inside of terminals. I think that works in term mode as well, but whoops. eShell mode. I think I just destroyed eShell. Term. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't work here, but at least it works in eShell. I know it's supposed to work other places too. Whoops. Once again. Here we go. I got my eShell back. All right. Matthew says, does Vertico have a select term repeat equivalent? Not built in, but I found that Minad actually had been working on one. Minad/u cron something. Okay, let me actually just go to his GitHub profile because I know it's there. Let's look at repositories. Ucron. Oh, come on. It's in here. Oh, I typed it wrong. Uchronia. So this is an option for getting that repeat command. Piotr says, acid burn, is that from the movie Hackers? Yes, of course. All of my computers are named from characters in the movie Hackers. So yeah, if you use that package, which is actually unreleased, you know, just keep that in mind. This is something that Minab was working on that didn't actually get released, and not certain if it will be fully released, but it does give you the ability to have a repeat command. I found out about this through the Vertico repo. Come on. And there's an issue about it. Repeat. And you'll see where basically Minad suggests this. Yeah, so basically if you use Uchronia repeat from that package, it will give you the ability to go back to the previous command that you typed. And I was gonna suggest to Minad that he just go ahead and publish it because it'd be useful. But then I started thinking, what do I use it for most frequently? Usually what I use it for is when I use consult ripgrep and I type in a search term and I find something that I'm looking for, then I need to reopen it with the same search term because I want to see the result listing again. And I think to myself, I think that's not the right way to do that. What I should be doing is using an occur buffer that just gives me the list of results in a buffer that I can just go refer back to and not have to keep searching over and over again. So I think that probably using that repeat command, unless there's a very specific way you're using it that's effective for you, I think maybe it's like a bad pattern that you should use something else for that. That's just my opinion anyway. Consult ripgrep keeps the input history. Yeah, well, let's see, because I think that you're right about that. Let me go and... Yeah, the right way probably involves embark. Yeah, if you use embark export. So let's just do a little demo on that. I'm going to pull up the Emacs folder here. I'm going to do consult ripgrep and search for comp native. Is that right? Okay, so comp native. So now what I'm going to do is press Control D to get up my embark list, and I'm going to use capital E for export, and then it gives me the list of all those results here. And I believe if I press enter on any of those, okay, so it actually didn't work to jump to one of the results. It did in Ivy. I don't know why the jumping is not working here, but yeah. See ya, Anders. So let's see. Okay, so consult ripgrep collect snapshot. That's interesting. Let me check that out too. Do that one more time. Let's do Control R. Native comp. It's not exactly what I had in mind. So it's because ret is bound in your evil maps. Oh, okay. Interesting. So comp native. And then I will run, what is it? Collect snapshot, Control S. So let me put it in insert mode. Okay, let's put it in Emacs state. Yeah, that's not working either. I don't know what's happening with that. And now we're back in another issue where I have the windows all screwed up. This is where winter undo comes into play. Cool, let's pop this back over. Nightly. Oh, come on. Did I close it again? Jeez, folks. Where did I put it? So unreliable. Window is dedicated to Embark Collect. Get out of here. Man. What a day, what a day. There it is. Okay. All right, what else can we look at? Let me pull up the notes again. I had the same... Ugh, here we go. What is happening? I had the same issue with XREF candidates, but looks like it's not working even in Emacs state for me. Yeah, I don't know what's happening with that. Sometimes there's some binding issues. Or maybe it's just a bug in Embark. To be honest with you, I haven't actually updated Embark. One thing that I found yesterday, which is a general tip for anybody using these packages, is that often it's best to be pulling the latest state of all these packages from master instead of installing the versions that are around. Or I guess there's two ways to do it. One is make sure that you're using only the latest versions of the packages. However, that's still not safe enough because these packages have interdependencies that sometimes whenever you update one of them, there will be things that are needed in the others that aren't there yet. So it's almost better to just keep them all updated to the latest the latest commit in all of the repos. So we're talking about Vertico, Consult, Marginalia, Embark. Yeah, those four mainly, I think, are the ones you want to keep up to date because it could have trouble. Valentino says, is this a Starship prompt? Man, who's calling me right now? Spam risk. So, no, this is not the Starship prompt, but it is inspired by the Starship prompt. I kind of ripped it off and just made my own eShell version of that. Ivan says, I just discovered your way of configuring eShell. Totally unrelated, but it made my day. I was constantly having issue with eShell mode map not being available. So eShell, I just don't understand how eShell was written because it defies all logic in terms of how to configure it correctly. I have problems with the mode map and the settings all the time because you don't know exactly when certain settings are supposed to be applied, and you try to move the settings to be applied on certain hooks, and then it works sometimes, but then other times it doesn't work. Like right now, my eShell alias just stopped working, and I don't know what happened. I've tried some things to fix it, but eShell, while it is pretty useful, it is a little bit flaky, and I need to go and sit down and try to just like get all the right ways to configure it dialed in so I can make a video about it, but I haven't done it because it's just not really... There's other videos I can make that take less effort, let's just put it that way. Well, relatively speaking, take less effort. They all take a decent amount of effort. All right, so let's kill this buffer once again so that it forgets where it's supposed to live. And then open it one more time. What a drag. I know, I'm sorry I keep complaining this whole time, but this has really annoyed me, this whole experience. What in the hell, man? Let's see. Hook eShell first time mode. Yeah, that's what I had to do, is this first time mode, but I think sometimes it doesn't work exactly the way it's supposed to, so I'm not sure what the deal is with that. Give me a break. Notes, streams. Oh my god, dude, this is so stupid. Anyway. Oh, Paul, you raised a good question. Starship in through eShell. So, one thing that I just saw is that there is now a Starship Rust application that will generate the prompt string for you, and you can shell out to it from your shell to get the prompt string, so you don't have to write your own custom shell logic in whatever shell you use. So actually, it might be fairly worthwhile these days to use that in eShell if you want a Starship like prompt, because you might be able to get all that information in your prompt a lot faster, because it would be pretty fast, I think, to use Rust for that. So I hadn't thought about it, but now that you say that, I am interested in trying to set that up because I think it would be great. Matthew says, can't you use win or undo the next time that happens? I'm having a different issue right now where when I try to switch to a particular buffer, it's popping it up over here, and I have no idea what's happening. I've got all the display buffer A-list stuff turned off, and it's still doing this. I have no idea what's going on. So anytime I stream, I have this problem, and I think it's because I never split windows unless I'm streaming. So whatever is wrong in my configuration, I don't notice it until this time of day. Let's see. Nipuna says, excited to see you're working on a Doom Emacs video or series. Can you reveal any more about your plans for Doom Emacs? I'm not actually making a series on Doom Emacs. I am doing a video, or I already recorded the video for Monday, about using Chemex 2 for using multiple Emacs configurations at the same time. So if you want to use Doom Emacs, Spacemacs, your own custom configuration, if you want to try the Emacs from scratch configuration, you can use all of those literally at the same time in different open windows with this configuration shim called Chemex 2. So on Monday, I'm going to post that video, and I find it to be very, very useful. It's even useful on Windows for doing certain things, so highly recommended. Definitely check out the video when it comes out on Monday. Pavel says, Starship has nice integrations with Fish to provide Vim-like editing in Shell. I didn't know that. I don't use Fish Shell, though. Actually, I do use Fish Shell for completions inside of eShell. I don't know that it's necessarily the best way to do things, but this is a package that was made by Ombrivar, I think. So let's check it out. Ombrivar Fish completions. So basically what it does is that it shells out to Fish to get completions for eShell, which sounds insane, but it actually works quite quickly, and I never have any trouble with it. And the benefit of that is that you don't have to set up pcomplete configurations for Git commands or for any other thing that you would need to have extra completions for. So if you just install this package and make sure that Fish is installed, then whenever you're in eShell, you can get completions. Like, let's see. If I want to CD into backgrounds, hit tab. When I hit tab right there, I believe that went to Fish to get the completion for that folder name. So that shows you how quick it is, which is pretty impressive, to be honest. Valentina says, what are you using to edit videos into EXWM? Is it possible or is it slow? Well, I don't really edit videos very frequently. I just use OBS, Open Broadcaster Software, I think is what it's called. And I just record my screen. And I have some setups so that you see my camera in the bottom corner and all that stuff. One day I should probably do a video about my streaming setup, but typically I just record videos and I don't edit them unless I have to. Like for the Geeks videos, I had to edit those because there are sections of time where I'm just sitting there staring at my screen waiting for an installation to complete, so I have to cut that out. And for that purpose, I use Kdenlive, which is a well-known video editor for Linux and for Windows also. I think it's probably also on Mac OS, but works really well. Got no complaints with it. It's been pretty stable and gets the job done. So that's what I'm using for editing when I do have to edit something. Let's see. Yes, thank you, Picard. Maybe you can undedicate a window with set window dedicated P. I was looking for that command earlier, but I got distracted on something else. So I don't even know if this one is set like that, but set window dedicated P nil. What else am I missing there? Probably a window argument. So set window dedicated P, window flag. What's the flag? Non-nil means mark window is dedicated to this buffer. Flag nil means mark window is non-dedicated. It's probably not what I'm... So I hit Control W there and close the chat window again. Gotta love it. Let's do this really quickly then. Set window dedicated P. So what is it? Selected window? No. Current window? No. What is it? Damn. What is the name of the variable for the current window? All right, let's just move it back anyway. Yeah, so Pavel, if you use fish completions in eShell and use Starship to drive the, thank you, Minad. If you use Starship RS to drive the prompt, then you basically get all the same things, plus with all the integration into Emacs. So it could be better if you want to do that kind of thing. I can understand why you wouldn't want to. Let's see, what else was it? A longer way to achieve the same results, but Bash is still better for Bash-related work. Yeah, I don't really do much Bash-related work, though. In fact, I don't spend a whole lot of time in the shell either. For navigating the file system, I'll either use find file or dired. For Git operations, I'll use Magit. And for compiling things, I'll use the compile command often. So there's not many things I do in the shell. Sometimes I'll run like geeks install or something like that, or maybe some of my commands that I use for installing or updating my profiles, but I probably should have Emacs bindings for those instead. And I think that's sort of the thing that you get into. So there's two worlds. One is the Vim focused world where you use Vim for editing files and you do everything else in the shell, which makes sense. And if you are in that world, it makes sense to use Bash or Z shell or fish, because the shell is very important to your workflow because it's sort of the place that drives all your other actions. When you're in Emacs, eventually you realize you need less and less of the shell and more just integrating things into Emacs and Emacs buffers and Emacs key bindings, because it's actually faster than going and typing commands. So I don't really need, I don't really need the shell that much, and that's why eShell makes sense to me, because I can do more integrated with Emacs things with eShell than if I had anything else. You can integrate vterm with Emacs fairly well through control codes, but it's not as good as just having direct access to Emacs. So if you go into, let me just show you what I mean. In eShell, I can type find-file, which is a command in Emacs. It's the same thing as if you were to press Control-X, Control-F. I think if I run this right now, it'll give me an error because I'm not running it interactively. But if I use find-file, let's see, systems.org, then it's going to open systems.org. So you're running actual Emacs commands in the shell. And even for things like ls, that's not the ls from the command line, that's ls implemented in Emacs. If you want the ls from the command line, I think you type *ls, and then it will give you the actual command line ls. So there are some benefits to doing things that way. And also it's slower, but you probably don't care as much if you're not using the shell for as many things as before. Nipuna says, have you dabbled in Kubernetes? I found Emacs less robust than VS Code for working with cutting edge cloud stuff. I don't really do a whole lot of the cloud development stuff. I haven't really used Kubernetes at all. I've used Docker a lot, but not for anything that complicated. eShell is good for MPV, YouTube viewer. Yeah, I guess so. That actually brings me back to the original topic at hand. I kind of got off on a tangent there. One of the things I want to look at, and for whatever reason, all of a sudden, magically, this buffer is showing up in the right place. So who knows why. Consult file externally. I think that's what it's called, right? Consult file externally. Yeah. So consult file externally can be used to open files in an external program. So let's say I want to open up an image here. I can press enter on this file, and it should open it up in an image viewer. Yeah, there it goes, finally. It opens it up in the FE image viewer. So I don't know why it took so long, but it probably has something to do with my machine. Let's make sure my camera's not frozen. So that can be useful if you know for certain that there's a file that you want to open in an external program, but sometimes you don't know you need to until you get there. I think that if you were to go here to a PNG and then hit Control D, is there an external? Let's see. compile file, relative path, blah, 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 blah. So probably it would be easy to add a binding into this list to, whenever you use normal find file, then use embark to open a file externally, but you would have to have a binding set up here to execute that command, basically. Ivan says, my experience is quite opposite. So used to Emacs or Pure Shell that I can't really live with VS Code. It doesn't help me that it has totally different bindings. Yeah, VS Code has its own whole... I think I just heard my child screaming. I'm not sure if that was the case. Anyway, if you hear a child screaming, it's because there's actually a child in the house. So, yeah, VS Code, I mean, it's set up the way that you would expect for a typical mainstream editor, I guess. And, yeah, I feel that Emacs is a lot more convenient for me just because I can bind things and set things up however I want. In the pop-up terminal in VS Code, it annoys me that VS Code shortcuts collide with readline shortcuts. Yeah, I haven't noticed that problem, but it doesn't really surprise me because, you know, the bindings are sort of... it's hard to find unique bindings whenever there's, you know, different generations or different styles of programs being used at the same time. All right, so I think that's everything that I had here in this list, but I wanted to also go to the whole list of consult-commands. So I'm going to use Control-D export here so we have this listing. Who knows why it opened it up there? I would rather it be here. So embark, collect, was it 3? There we go. Let's go back to this window. Great, okay, no problems here. So I also wanted to switch, jeez, come on. Once again, Control-W, S. What is happening, dude? Like, even if I try to split a window, maybe embark is actually trying to hold on to that window. Really, really annoying. What a day. Whenever I have my separate screen working again, it's going to be a lot easier to deal with this, I think. Lishai says, can you persuade eShell to open visual commands in vterm instead of term? That's a great question. Minad says, do you have embark consult set up? Then consult file externally would be added automatically to embark file map. I don't think so. Is it just requiring the package? Embark consult. Okay, so it doesn't exist. Do I need to install that as a separate package? Let's check straight pull package, embark. Okay, so that's not there. Yeah, so I don't know if that's something that I have to install some way, but that would be great if I had that. So to answer Lishai Tung's question, what was it called? eShell visual options, commands. Let's see. That's not the one. Visual subcommands. Let's actually take a look here. Maybe I can find, is it term mode? Okay. eShell exec visual. So it seems that eShell exec visual is literally calling term mode internally. So I don't think that there's a way to change that. But I think if you were to replace this eShell exec visual with your own implementation that called into vterm instead, then it would work. I don't know if anybody else has made a package that does that, but I think this is sort of the way to do that since there doesn't seem to be a hook to control that behavior. So you would have to do a little bit of hacking. But since this is Emacs, it's actually possible to do that. You could just redefine this function to do whatever you wanted it to do, and it probably would be okay, so long as there's not some other function that needs to be called to set stuff up somewhere else. You might have to trace the call stack and figure out how to replace the behavior completely. But I would say it is definitely possible for that to work. Oh my goodness. GK Pseudo says that I got so used to PostFrame with Ivy. Would it be possible to implement with Vertico? I remember you asked that. Oh, thanks for coming, Pavel. Nice to have you here. So would it be possible to implement Ivy PostFrame with Vertico? What was it? There was a, Emacs mini frame. Was that what it was called? Show mini buffer in a child frame. So this is possibly one option because it does a similar thing like PostFrame does. But I did see on an issue on the Vertico repo that it doesn't actually work so well with Vertico. There's also a possibility of using just PostFrame itself and try to emulate what the Ivy PostFrame package does. Because, I mean, you can use PostFrame to create a child frame however you like, and you can put whatever you want in it. So it's possible that you could hook into Vertico exhibit, I think is the name of the function. Yeah, the mini buffer expanding definitely makes the experience less nice. I liked it better when I had Ivy PostFrame set up, but Ivy PostFrame had its own issues, which really annoyed me. So I ended up turning it off because it caused problems. But maybe I'll try it again, because it is nicer not to have your window configuration get switched around, especially if you're using EXWM. Hey, Juanito. Okay, let's see. I keep popping to the wrong workspaces. See, whenever you get used to having workspace keys right under your fingers, you just start switching to workspaces indiscriminately, sort of just as like a, I don't want to say a nervous tick, but more like a thing that you do whenever your brain is sort of idle. All right, let me pop this out one more time. This has got to get monotonous for you to watch. It's getting monotonous for me to have to do it myself the whole time. All right, so cool. Minad says, I am mostly bugged by the window bumping if the mini buffer grows, since Emacs requires the cursor to stay visible. Yeah, that is a problem too. Oh, okay, so let me tell you about one other thing. We've been talking this whole time, which has been fun, but I haven't even got to some of the other things I meant to talk about. If you have been using Ivy, which I know some of you here have been, if you're using Counsel find file, probably you've gotten used to the way that it works. So let me just show you really quickly. So Counsel find file. When you enter Counsel find file, if I were to go into projects, code, Emacs, come on. My bindings aren't set up, so it does weird stuff. Projects, code, Emacs. So in this folder, if I press backspace, it actually goes up one level in the folder hierarchy, which is very, very nice and convenient. And once you get used to that, it's very annoying whenever you find that Vertico doesn't do that. But the fact that Vertico doesn't do that is actually not a problem, because the whole point is that you have the ability to add this functionality if you want to, because Vertico is meant to be more simple and less featureful on purpose. So there is a way to add this functionality to Vertico. If I can get back to my notes. Oh man, again. I just don't understand, man. I don't understand what's happening. Let's just do this. I'm gonna hide the chat for a minute while I show you this. So I have a cut down Vertico config here. This is not a full config. I'm just sort of doing this to show you what you need to set up. So in the bind section of your use package config for Vertico, you can have a map for mini buffer local map, and then have a special function set up and bind it to backspace so that you can implement this functionality yourself. So I have a function that I sort of borrowed from an issue on the Selectrum repo. Part of this is from Selectrum, and part of it is what I sort of added myself. The idea is that you make your own backward kill function that you bind to backspace. And then if you are in a mini buffer where a file name is being completed, this is a variable that's in Emacs. It basically says a file name is being completed by the mini buffer. Then you run this code that's able to look backward in the input to find the next slash, and then delete all the way up to it if there is one there. Otherwise, if you're not completing a file name, backspace will just use the regular delete backward char, and it will pass along whatever numeric argument you typed in case you're trying to delete 5 characters, 10 characters, or something like that. So I'm actually using something like this, not this exact same function, but a variation on it in my config. So if I try to open up find file with Vertico, and I go into the Emacs folder here, I can press Alt-H and get the same kind of functionality. So if you were sort of wondering how to get that functionality back in Vertico, this is the way to do it. I'm going to commit this to the show notes so that whenever you watch the recording, whoever's watching the recording can go refer to this and copy this code if you want to. It's also in my personal config repo if you want to check it there as well. Now let's try to get the chat back up. All right. Let's see. Heard somewhere that Anki was first developed as an Emacs package and later moved to Python-based flashcard spaced repetition software. Hadn't heard that. But I guess it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, sometimes people will implement nice things in Emacs and then realize, oh, you know, the world might find this useful. So maybe it's good to share it in a way that non-Emacs users can also benefit from it. So I can understand that. All right. Other consult packages. So if you use LSP mode, there is an LSP mode interface for consult. And it is... what are we doing here? There it goes. It's called Consult LSP, and basically what it does is provide you with a couple of other commands, Consult LSP Diagnostics and Consult LSP Symbols, which gives you better interfaces for these things that also have like group headings, which is kind of nice. I don't actually see group headings in my Emacs config right now, or in my Vertico setup. I need to ask Minad about this actually, but the idea is that if you want to have a better completion interface for finding errors or finding symbols inside of your projects, then you could use this Consult LSP to get that. I haven't actually used it yet, but I am interested to use it. It seems pretty straightforward to set up. So if you use Vertico or if you use Selectrum, this should also be pretty helpful. Also, app launching. So if you were a person like me who uses EXWM and you're trying to launch applications in Linux, you probably use the Counsel Linux app command that as a part of Counsel. If you want a different way to do that, that is, it fits in with the general philosophy of Consult and Vertico, you can use this app launcher package. And it has basically the same functionality, but it does it in a way that works with Vertico and Selectrum. So if you want to see that in my case, I can hit super space, which is my key binding for that, and you can see all of my applications that I might want to launch here. Let's see, is there anything worth clicking here? Yeah, what about Mahjong? There we go. So I launched Mahjong with that. So that's pretty useful. I like that quite a lot. Sagar says, I'm currently on number 5 of your live stream of Emacs from scratch. Love it so far. How much time will it take to be at this stage? You mean like what you're seeing now? I don't know. It really just depends on how much time you have to devote to playing with your Emacs configuration. I've seen people get to this level pretty fast, but the thing is, you may not understand how everything works if you move fast. So it's good to try to understand what you're doing and learn as you go. You're going to learn as you go anyway, but the important thing about Emacs is to realize that it's not just an editor in the sense that you just use it for text editing. It's more of a programming environment that can itself be programmed. And the more that you learn about Emacs Lisp and how to configure Emacs using Emacs Lisp and even write your own functions, the more that your expertise will grow, and then you'll be very self-sufficient. You won't have to really consult videos or external sources unless you just want to watch videos for fun, which I'm sure some people here, I know some people in the chat right now know as much or more than I do about Emacs, and they just watch these videos because they like Emacs. So basically what I'm trying to say is the more that you spend time trying to learn how Emacs works internally, not really like the code internally, but just like how hooks work, how functions and commands work, all that stuff, like all the things I'm covering in the Learning Emacs Lisp series, the more that you're going to be self-sufficient, and you will be able to do a lot yourself. Like all this stuff, you know, looking at Emacs packages and trying them out, I pretty much know what to do, and I can look in the code of the packages to figure out problems a lot of the time. Yeah, Minad says group titles, probably some packages outdated. Note that I've sent a patch to Emacs which added grouping to the default Emacs UI. So I noticed there was a commit to, I think, Consult yesterday. And it's this one. And I'm kind of wondering, is this relevant to 27 as well, to Emacs 27? Because this seems relevant to the group titles not displaying. I don't know if Zamels is still on the stream, but I think he ran into this where on 2 different machines, he was seeing the group titles in one machine, but not in the other, and we couldn't figure out why it was different. Andrew says, I watch these videos to get ideas about Emacs packages I may not have heard about. Yeah, that's also a good idea because, I mean, there's so much stuff happening in the Emacs community and so many different ways to use Emacs that it's literally impossible to know about everything. So it's a good way to learn about other things you might want to try by, watching videos. I usually learn about things from Reddit and even from the System Crafters Discord. A lot of people bring up things I've never heard of. So just being a part of a community is a great way to learn new things that you didn't know about. So some other resources you might be interested in. The Consult wiki is pretty good because it's got a lot of information about how to configure Consult in various ways. I think it was written from when Vertico didn't exist yet, so it may be more Selectrum focused. However, I think a lot of these things still apply to Vertico as well. Buffer sources, don't preview EXWM windows. This might be interesting to you if you use EXWM. With the buffer previewing, sometimes if you preview EXWM buffers, it like flashes the window, or maybe you lose your key bindings because you've got character mode turned on a window, so you can't cycle anymore. So what you can do is use a customization of Consult to not preview any EXWM buffers whenever you pass through them. So that could be pretty useful to you. Lots of other useful stuff here that you might want to take a look at. This is where things sort of get more into the customization phase, because part of the point of using things like Vertico and Consult is that you kind of want to be able to customize things more. So the more that you learn about how to customize these packages, the better off you'll be, because you'll get to put together your ideal completion setup. Also, there is an issue on the Consult repo. It's the command wish list. And this is also a good resource for figuring out what stuff actually is in Consult or what might be in other packages. So you'll see a lot of things that are listed as being implemented. You might see the PR or the issue where they're being discussed, and also things that aren't implemented yet. So definitely take a look here to see if there's anything related to what you might want to use. There's also a list of ideas that were rejected, which can be useful to find where these things might exist that aren't actually part of the Consult repo. So for instance, the LSP was mentioned somewhere. There's also evil specific commands for Consult, which are now a part of evil collection. Consult emoji, I don't know. I mean, some of these things that are being asked for could probably just be implemented as normal commands that don't really require like a Consult interface, because the whole point is that Vertico should be able to show just normal completing read commands so long as what you're doing isn't too exotic. So a lot of the stuff doesn't necessarily need to be Consult specific. It could just be Emacs completion system specific, just using completing read. Salvatore says, I watched your video, How to Create and Manage Multiple Windows, and was wondering if you were familiar with any workflows for saving a preset arrangement of splits and files. I think desktop.yel is a good solution for that, and it's actually built into Emacs. Let's see, Emacs. So that's funny that Emacs from scratch shows up so high on the list, but that's not what I'm looking for. All right, was it desktop mode? Desktop save mode. So this basically will save the list of files you have open and the buffers, I think, so that you can restore that session on future times that you open Emacs. I haven't really used it very much. I think that Angry Bacon Matthew has been using that, so he may be able to give some more hints on that one. But that is a way to do it. There may be other packages as well. I think some of the workspace management packages like Persp mode also have their own saving. The one that I use called perspective.el is supposed to work with desktop.el, I think. So perspective.el Emacs. So if we look here, maybe search for desktop. Yeah, so Perspective does not work with Emacs desktop.el. It's because Perspective state stores buffer and window information and frame parameters, blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay, so it has its own save and load feature. So if I were to use something, I would probably use persp state save and persp state load. So it really just depends on how you use Emacs. If you use just normal frames with window layouts and files that are open, then probably the desktop mode stuff will work for you. But if you use a specific workspace management package, you might have to look into how to do the saving for that one. Alrighty. So I think that's it that I had for Consult today. Let me check, see. Yeah, we've lost some people on the stream here. Probably they got bored with me flipping back and forth trying to fix my windows, but that's okay. So Emacs news, a little bit of news we can talk about for a moment. Minad actually has a new package out this week. It's called AFFE, A-F-F-E. I don't know if that's the way you're supposed to pronounce it, but the idea is that this is a asynchronous fuzzy finder package, and I like the image here. So it's basically like the FZF program, the command line fuzzy finder, but it is written using Emacs regular expressions, but also it's running in an asynchronous Emacs process, so it's not clogging up your current Emacs session. I haven't actually tried this yet, but apparently the way you set it up is to use order lists to help with the filtering. And then, let's see, is this for like the current file, or is it for open a DRED buffer, package install from buffer, what? Okay. So filters the context of all text files in the current directory, filters the context of file paths in the current directory, similar to consult, grep, and find. So what I wonder is, what's the difference really? Maybe it's not calling out the external programs, maybe is the difference. Let's see. Transforms the input string into a list of regular expressions. Regular expressions are passed to AF backend. More primitive matching technique. So I could try this, but it might also destroy my configuration because I don't trust anything at this point. Not that I think this package has anything wrong with it. I think that my configuration is just doing really freaky stuff these days. So installing a new package could just be a nightmare. I'll probably do a video on this also once I've used it a little bit and maybe spoken to Minad about what the best use cases are for it. But it's cool to see another new package that shows up in this sort of realm of independent packages for finding and selecting things in Emacs. Let's see. Pre-built Emacs 28 package for Windows with native compilation. So this is kind of nice if you want to use Emacs native comp, but you're on Windows. You can download a pre-built package of Emacs 28 with native comp functionality turned on. I recommend this because compiling this on Windows is a bit of a pain. I actually tried this week, and the build that I produced was super buggy and didn't work, so I ended up going back to Emacs 27. But this is one way to try it out if you want to without a whole lot of trouble. There's a build artifact you can download, or like a package basically, so you just download this and run it, and in theory it should work. But I found native comp to be a little bit buggier on Windows, but it could just be the 2 times I tried it that I didn't do it right. So worth taking a look at if you use Windows and you want to have a faster Emacs experience. I will say that I didn't really notice it being supremely faster. So, you know, your mileage may vary. Emacs on Windows in general is pretty slow, and I don't like it. But if you're on Windows and you need your Emacs fix, you don't really have a choice. So, I mean, the only other choice really is to use WSL or VM and use the Linux version of Emacs, but that's its own set of headaches that I don't want to get into right now. So let's see, configuring bug reference mode from within org mode. This was a blog post that I found on Sachichua's Emacs news list for this week. This is actually pretty cool. I haven't heard about this before, but it seems like a pretty useful package. So there's a package called bug reference mode, which allows you to set up a regular expression to check for bug numbers. So say you're a programmer and you work with some kind of bug database, let's say GitHub issues or Jira or GitLab or whatever. And inside of your source files, you may have comments that have references to specific bug numbers. So like hash mark, 123 for bug number 123. what this package does is that when you turn on this mode for a buffer, it will turn the bug number that it finds in the buffer into a link that you can open to the bug tracking repository. So obviously, if you work on a lot of different repositories, you're probably thinking, well, I can't do this just in my main global configuration because there's going to be different URLs for all of the repos that I use. So one thing that this article that I linked to is suggesting, which obviously makes sense, is to use file local variables. You could also use directory local variables to set up the bug reference URL format and the regular expression per repository. Actually, let me check one thing. It'd be nice if there was a like a list that you could have for different bug formats that link to different repos. I don't know if that's a feature that this package has, but that's just something off the top of my head that would make it easier than having to resort to file local or directory local variables. But it is possible to do this apparently. And this particular article is talking about how to set this up in org mode files. So if you have an org mode file that's tracking maybe tasks that you have related to a specific project, and you want in that org mode file all bug numbers to be linked to the actual place that you want to go look at them, then you can follow the instructions inside of this post and have that set up for your org files that you use for managing those projects. So kind of a useful thing. I might actually try this because it is useful to be able to link to those things easily without having to go copy a link from the bug tracker and go back into your org file and use Control-C, Control-L to create a link, blah, blah, blah. Just, type text into your buffer and Emacs can find it and then create a link for you. So much better that way. And the last thing that I have on the list here is the Nixt browser just had a 2.0 release. And if you haven't heard about Nixt, Nixt is basically the Emacs of web browsers. And I mean that very literally. Nixt is highly inspired by Emacs, and the interface is very inspired by Emacs, even to the degree that there's a meta X binding that has a command list. There's, describe variable, describe function. It's written in common Lisp, so you can use another Lisp language to configure this program. So, we use GNU Emacs for our desktop environment. We use GNU Geeks for managing our system. And now you can have a browser that you're also configuring with Lisp. So if you want to live the Lisp lifestyle to 100%, you can try out Nixt 2.0. Apparently, it's gained some new functionality where maybe theming is better. There's a dark mode to have darkened pages. So if you are like me and use dark mode and you don't want to be blinded whenever you find a page with a light background, you can turn the dark mode on. There's also a new data profile feature, which sounds really nice if you want to isolate certain sites and keep them from tracking you or reading cookies from other sites or doing whatever kind of nefarious things that websites do these days. I think you can set up data profiles per site to keep those things isolated. Or you can have even like a work and a personal profile. This kind of thing sounds really useful to me. Personally, I've had trouble getting used to using Nixt, especially in EXWM when there's overlap between the key bindings and the interface and whatnot. It's weird to have an Emacs inside of an Emacs basically, but that's sort of what you get with Nixt. But I'm very tempted to try it yet again for the third or fourth time now, because there's a lot of stuff here that sounds really good, and also being able to customize things with Lisp does sound very good as well. You can add custom autofill commands, which is kind of interesting. You could templatize certain things or even have functions that just generate stuff to be put into a field. So for instance, if you wanted to have like templates that you use for responding to people, or maybe you use a particular website where you're editing things and you want to be able to insert templates or something, you could do that, I think, with this autofill functionality. What else? Automatically load, unload settings for matching URLs and predicates. So like the example here is automatically enable dark mode when navigating to Wikipedia after 6 p.m. So basically for a specific website, you can have rules for the configuration that are on by default or are on when a certain function returns true, which you can imagine it can be useful in many, many cases. So this is another reason why I'm kind of interested in using Nixt again. There's visual mode selection now inside the buffer. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but you can have the ability to do a more sort of keyboard-driven selection inside of browser buffers. Let's see, what else? Oh, this is kind of interesting. There's an automatically reload a tab buffer on a specific interval. You can turn on watch mode and it will just refresh a page for you, so you don't have to do it yourself. That can be useful for various different things, so that's kind of nice. A lot of different things here. You should definitely check out the release notes, because there's a lot of new features and it sounds very tempting. I might try to get familiar with this again and make a video on it at some point, because it is definitely within the sphere of interest of this channel. So definitely go take a look at Nixt and try it out and see if you like it. One thing I will say is that by default, at least in Geeks, the package for Geeks of Nixt, it uses WebKit GTK, and I don't really like that rendering engine because it doesn't have good support for a lot of modern things. Other people might disagree with me, but what I've found is many websites don't work the same way with WebKit GTK as they do with Chromium or Firefox. So one benefit of Nixt is they actually do support Qt Web Engine or Qt Web Engine alongside WebKit GTK. I think you have to recompile the program with that configuration, but you can use it if you want to. And the point of using Web Engine is that it is actually the Chromium rendering engine. So many websites will render the way that you expect them to, will have high performance, videos will play correctly. So if you want to try Nixt and you don't like WebKit GTK, you can make it use Web Engine instead. I'm going to try to do that. I might have to tweak the Geeks package for it, but it does seem like the kind of thing I might want to do pretty soon. Let's see if I missed anything inside the chat here. And now we've got the people across the street sawing their trees down again. Whenever you hear the video on Monday, you'll hear it there too. Let's see. GK Sudo says, I really like Nixt, but I find Qt Browser with tabs as windows works better in Emacs switching using CXB. Yeah, me too. That's what I use primarily. I use Qt Browser and I have Windows tabs as windows so that I can do something like this, where I have my buffer list is actually my list of tabs. And it's pretty nice. I like that. I don't know if Nixt has a tab per window modality, but I would hope that they would at least support that somehow. There must be a way to do it, actually. I mean, it's a hackable browser. I would think that you could add that yourself if you wanted to, so I might look into that. Let's see. Piotr says, Minad, thank you for all your work. Yes, thank you, Daniel, for all your work. A lot of great contributions to the Emacs community. Thank you for letting me know my camera froze and my face is in a very ridiculous position. Look at that. It's just wonderful. It fills me with joy to see myself represented in such a way. I got a feeling this is not going to work when I turn it back on. Okay, maybe we got lucky today that I might be able to actually end the stream with my webcam on. So did it freeze again already? No. Okay, good. Yes. The sawing froze my webcam, and the neighbors definitely cut my webcam cord. Man, it just, like, this is just a whole barrel of laughs here, I gotta say. So yeah, that was everything that I had for the stream today. If anybody has any like questions, I think that, let's see, how long have we been going here? It's been an hour 48, so we can chat for just a moment, and I'll have to jump off so I can go and visit with some people here. But if you have any questions about Vertico or Consult or Emacs or Geeks or anything like that, definitely feel free to let us know in the chat. And for those of you who are not members of the System Crafters Discord yet, definitely click the link in the description and join if you want to talk to more people about Emacs. Many of the people you see here in the chat today are over on the Discord as well. So if you want to continue the discussions you're having with people, definitely join the Discord. Mark says, I just switched my Ivy config to Vertico, Marginalia, and Embark Consult. That's great. There's a lot of people switching right now. And I think it's really nice for people to be trying out these new packages because they work really well. And as you can see, Minad or Daniel is very responsive to feedback and very eager to make good stuff for all of us. So I'm very happy to be promoting what he's doing through these videos. Also, I want to say, I don't know how you feel about it, Minad, but I think you should set up a GitHub sponsors profile, because if you do that, I'll be your first sponsor. So consider it. Think about it. Luis says, do you plan to do a video about integrating EXWM workspaces with perspective.el? Yes, I do, and I've been meaning to do it for a while, and I haven't gotten there yet. But yeah, it's on my short list of things to do next. Thomas says that he wishes org roam will be on my list for a future webcast. Yes, I will do a series of videos on org roam. My problem with video series is that once I start a series, I get a little bit too like focused, and I feel like I have to complete it and not change to other things, even though I would really like to talk about org roam sometime soon. I've got too many series that I've got sort of pending, and it's hard for me to break away from those, which you might have noticed I started doing this week, making a video about Vertico, and next week it's going to be about Emacs. So I'm breaking my own rules here, but all that's to say, the chances of there being org roam videos within the next couple months is probably higher now. Let's see. Matto says, what's the difference between Vertico and iComplete Vertical that was merged in Emacs 28? So I haven't used the specific iComplete Vertical that was merged into Emacs. There's a different one that is being implemented by Omar Antolin. And let's see, iComplete Vertical. So this version of iComplete Vertical, I have used. Did I say his name right? Oh, okay, yeah. So Omar Camarena. So this one is nice. Basically what it does is takes the existing iComplete completion interface and just makes the display vertical, sort of like what Vertico looks like. The thing that's weird about it is that instead of moving your cursor whenever you go up and down, it actually shifts all of the completion options up and down so that the currently selected one is at the top. And it was a little bit jarring at first, but I kind of liked it. And you get the same benefits as you get with Vertico, where you have something that's built in, sort of uses built-in functionality from Emacs, works with Marginalia, Consult, Embark, etc. But I had some issues with it at the time, and I kind of switched back to Ivy. The one that is in Emacs, it just got merged into Emacs. I have no idea what that one's like. And I'm not sure why that one got merged whenever there was already one being developed that is that works pretty well. So I don't know anything about it, but I know that this one is pretty nice. So if you wanted to try an iComplete Vertical implementation, you could try this one, or you could try the one that is in Emacs 28 now with the latest commits. But your mileage may vary. Hey, Alex. Let's see. Yeah, GK Suda says Corfu is a great addition. Yeah, Corfu is nice. You should definitely check out Corfu if you use company mode. But you don't necessarily need Corfu because Vertico can do the same thing for you. It just doesn't pop up in the buffer. It's just a little bit different. Piotr says, David, I fear one thing. Hope that you don't get hit by burnout. Your content is gold. Hope you keep going at this. Thank you, Piotr. There was a period of time at the beginning of the year where I was making 2 recorded videos per week plus a live stream, and that was too much. So you might have noticed I only make 1 recorded video per week and a live stream, and that's a lot more achievable. Really, the main thing is to make sure that I don't spend too much time on a particular video or on a series where I start to get bored with it. Or not so much bored, but like you get into the part of the content where it's harder to make the content because it's more deep or advanced. So switching to other topics every now and then actually is very useful for not getting burnout, because I'm interested in all this stuff a lot. And if I switch to a different topic, it re-energizes my brain. So burnout is not so easy with this channel, I think, because there's always something interesting to talk about. And if I get bored with something, or if I get a little bit tired of some area, I can just switch to something else. So don't worry too much about that. I think it's going to be great. Drashal says, does the highlight color sometimes break in Vertico? Which highlight color? Are you talking about if you start typing something? Actually, let's do it this way. One thing I have noticed is that if I type EMA, select this item and hit tab, then the EMA is still highlighted here. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but I haven't seen any other issues with colors being broken with Vertico. Thomas says, I know the feeling. I'm also waiting for the week with 2 Wednesdays in it so I can do all the stuff I have planned. Yeah, for me, Well, I'll just come out right out and say it. My ultimate goal is to eventually be able to make a living doing what I'm doing right now so that I can do it full time and have more time to actually learn all the things that I want to learn and spend time on the projects that will be of use or interest to this community. So whenever I start talking about sponsors in a few minutes, that's basically what the point of that is for me to eventually get to a point where I can spend more time learning about all this stuff to share with you, and also to work on cool things like the mesh compiler that I talked about and some other projects that I have in mind that I don't have time to do because, you know, having a full-time job and having a kid to raise and then trying to do a YouTube channel on the side is a lot of stuff. So if I could try to eliminate the whole full-time job aspect of that, then it would be nice. But also it's not very easy to do that because, you know, getting paid from a job is a nice consistent standard income, and it's hard to match that by doing things yourself. But I'm motivated to get it done. Okay, so I think we've been here for an hour and 55 minutes, so I'm going to start winding things down now. So as I said, on Monday, we're going to have a video about Emacs 2, which is a really cool Emacs configuration switcher. And I highly recommend checking it out because if you want to use Doom Emacs or Space Max and also try to build your own config from scratch at the same time, this package or this config is going to make it way easier for you to do that. I'm using it as my core config now. So in my .files repo, I'm actually using Emacs 2 so that I can switch between configuration profiles easily. This is going to make .file detective episodes a lot easier in the future because now I can actually load someone's configuration using Emacs 2 while having my EXWM setup still displayed. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Hopefully I'll be able to do a new .file detective on a stream pretty soon, maybe next week or the week after. We'll see. And aside from that, a few new things in the pipe. I'm recording videos in advance for when I'll be out of town. And I've been working on some videos on Magit. And I'm thinking about doing a video or two on straight.el because a lot of people have been asking about it. Drishal is one of the persons who's been asking about it. So I will try to get that started soon as well. Try to start getting some videos on that. So maybe within the next month or so, you'll see videos about Magit and straight.el, and also the other topics we've been talking about so far about, you know, geeks and Emacs Lisp and the general Emacs Essentials series. So looking forward to doing all of those things. So yeah, I think it's time to wrap it up now. Thanks, Alex, for being here today. And thank you all for being here today. I really appreciate all of the interaction in the chat. Thank you, Minad, for being here today. I really appreciate you being here to answer questions. I know I asked you on short notice if you could show up, and you did, so I really appreciate it. Luis says, what about your ThinkPad, the one that was unbootable? I've got it sent into Lenovo. They're working on it. We'll see if I get it back in a week or so, and then hopefully my stream situation will be easier to deal with then. Chris says, will you look at the Nix browser? Yeah, at some point I will. I just need to get back into it and have a configuration that I am comfortable enough with that I can talk about. All right, with that said, let's jump over to the sponsors. Let me pull that up. Actually, let's use the nice little OBS WebSocket EL for that. So Super S P, right? Yes, I think that should have done it. Okay, so these fine people have decided to be sponsors of the work that I do, making videos about GNU Emacs, GNU Geeks, etc. And I'm very thankful for their support. If you're interested in supporting the work that I do on this channel, definitely check out the links below in the descriptions. I'm on both GitHub sponsors and Patreon. You can also do one-time tips through PayPal and GitHub sponsors as well. And if you aren't interested in supporting in that way, please like the video and share it with people who might be interested in it, people who like Emacs or Geeks, etc. The more people who find these videos, the more our community can grow, and the more we can share knowledge and, you know, have fun talking about these things. So let's see. Yeah, that's it for this week. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you for suffering through all the weird technical issues. Hopefully in a week or two, all that will be ironed out and we'll be back to the more stable stream situation that we had before. But I'm at least glad I can still stream right now, because if I wasn't able to, I would probably be really sad. So anyway, have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks again for being here. And until next time, happy hacking. We'll see you.